Chapter 55 to 56. Through the binoculars, Shirou observed Tokiomi as he entered the police hospital. What is he doing here? Shirou furrowed his brow in confusion. He had originally planned to use Ryunosuke as bait to lure Kiritsugu and then kill him, but he never expected his target to shift to Tokiomi. Kill him! Shirou almost immediately changed the target of his attack. Compared to Tokiomi, Kiritsugu was insignificant now. Shirou and Spartacus formed an alliance, thinking he had a chance against Waver and Iskander because Iskander did not possess a noble phantasm that could instantly kill Spartacus. However, Gilgamesh was a different story. The opponent held a noble phantasm that not only could kill Spartacus instantly, but also could destroy his unlimited blade works. It was a formidable enemy. To contend with Gilgamesh, their only option was to target Tokiomi. But Tosaka Tokiomi had always been hiding in his mansion, protected by a powerful bounded field. Shirou did not know if Gilgamesh would be in the mansion or not, so he had not intended to attack Tosaka Tokiomi. However, the opponent has unexpectedly appeared here, providing an opportunity for Shirou. Kill. At the very least, he should try to cut off his hands. This may be the best opportunity to neutralize Gilgamesh. Compared to Gilgamesh, who had dragged Shirou into the war and consistently oppressed him, Kiritsugu and even the Night King Artoria were insignificant. This was a golden opportunity. Shirou's first priority was to make Gilgamesh withdraw from the Holy Grail War. As long as Gilgamesh withdrew, Shirou would be free to do as he pleased, whether it be to fight or hide, to stay in Fuyuki City or go to Hokkaido. There would be no obstacles. With this thought in mind, Shirou put down his binoculars and prepared to infiltrate the police hospital. Kiritsugu, who had been relying on drone monitors to track his targets, furrowed his brow. The monitor at the police hospital had been destroyed, leaving him in the dark about the situation inside. Meanwhile, the suspected master of the Matu family had begun to make his move. The destruction of the monitor at the police station hospital indicated that there was a problem inside, and it was highly likely that someone was lying in wait for him. This person could be another master, or it could be that the master of Castor was not dead and had anticipated Kiritsugu's arrival, setting a trap. However, this assumption was at odds with the actions of Castor's master the day before. Kiritsugu couldn't help but wonder what the reality of the situation was. Kiritsugu, unaware of the strange circumstances, found himself in a familiar situation. As a Magus killer, he knew that during the Holy Grail War, there could potentially be multiple masters in this police hospital. Without hesitation, Kiritsugu opened the large toolbox beside him to prepare for whatever choice he needed to make. Normally, Kiritsugu's toolbox would be filled with handguns, sniper rifles, and other firearms. But this toolbox was different. Its wide and heavy appearance was a clear indication that it was filled with Kiritsugu's most treasured weapon, a portable rocket launcher, specifically an RPG. With the knowledge that there was a problem in this police hospital and at least two masters present, Kiritsugu's plan was simple. Why bother going in when he could just fire a few RPGs and send them all to heaven? He expertly loaded the bulky RPG rocket launcher with a steady hand, the weight of the weapon barely registering in his grip. He stood tall on the roof of the car, his eyes locked onto the nearest power plant looming in the distance. He took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and pressed the launch button. Whoosh! Shirou moved cautiously as he made his way into the police hospital, unnoticed by Tosaka Tokiomi. He was just about to let out a sigh of relief when a loud sound filled his ears. Startled, he looked up and was met with a sight that left him stunned. A rocket was spinning through the air, leaving a long trail of smoke in its wake as it hurtled toward a nearby diesel power plant. Shit! Without hesitation, Shirou quickly rolled to the side and jumped into a nearby small pond, instantly projecting multiple shield plates around himself to create a crude barrier for protection. The next moment, boom! A sound like thunder blasted in Shirou's ears, and he felt the ground beneath him tremble violently. There was no mistaking it. The power plant had been blown apart in a devastating explosion. The next moment, boom, boom, boom! The sound of even more terrifying explosions rang out, and a sudden burst of heat erupted, like a fiery inferno unleashed upon the world. Shirou, even while submerged in the water, could feel the burning sensation as if it was consuming everything in its path. There was no doubt that the RPG bombing of the power plant had caused a major explosion in the building, and the diesel inside had been ignited as a result. Feeling that the outside had calmed down, Shirou opened some of the shields around him, and his head emerged from the water, surveying the area. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva as he looked around. Everywhere his gaze fell, he saw nothing but ruins, crumbling walls, and withered branches. A sea of fire. An RPG caused a huge explosion and it destroyed a quarter of the police hospital. If there were still people in the police station's hospital, the casualties would be incalculable. His throat constricted as he struggled to swallow. This is brutal, but who could have done such a thing? Kiritsugu, could it be you? Shirou's initial suspicion fell on Kiritsugu, as he was his primary target. However, as he had not seen Kiritsugu present at the scene, he couldn't be certain if it was him or someone else. It was also possible that the perpetrator had expertly concealed themselves and had outsmarted Shirou's detection abilities, attacking him in a spot where he had let his guard down. As he was deep in thought, a sudden whoosh caught his attention. He looked up to see another RPG rocket soaring through the sky, hurtling towards a distant building. Damn it! There's another one! Shirou swore as he quickly dove back into the water, using his shield to protect himself tightly. Faced with Kiritsugu's formidable RPG attack, Shirou was not the only one affected. Even Tokiomi, who had been waiting in the hospital building with a composed smile on his face, couldn't help but furrow his brow. As expected of the despicable Magus killer, using missiles to attack me, Tokiomi felt slightly troubled because this meant that most of the arrangements he had set up around the hospital were basically destroyed. However, he did not let any hint of composure slip. The poise and grace of nobility had been ingrained in him for a long time, and even under the most difficult circumstances, he would not let himself appear undignified. The destruction of most of his arrangements by the missile attack did not mean defeat for him. Tokiomi chuckled and reached out to Kirei. Kirei, bring in assassin. That insignificant Magus will certainly investigate after the bombing to check if I and the El Meloi have been killed. Use this opportunity to draw their attention and have assassin eliminate both him and El Meloi. I understand, teacher. Tokiomi nodded, then ended the communication. He knew that his student, who had been serving in the Holy Church all this time, would use assassin to aid him. I must express my gratitude to Kirei. Once he graduates, I will give him a more precious gift, Tokiomi thought to himself. However, he was unaware that at that very moment, Kirei, the person he trusted, was secretly mocking his naivety. Preparations for the war were plentiful, the considerations were thorough, and even the enemy's character and movements were studied in depth. Yet it was always at this crucial moment that Tokiomi failed to notice the small details that determined the outcome. Indeed, Kirei was not in the basement of the church, but in a small hotel located not far from the police hospital. The people around there had been dispersed by him, otherwise Kiritsugu's RPG would have caused a commotion. "Shall we go inside, master?" Assassin, who stood before Kirei, asked. "No, just wait outside," Kirei said. "Oh, are you planning to take action against Tokiomi?" The assassins were aware of the alliance between Kirei and Tokiomi. However, they soon came to realize that the bond between the two was fragile and could easily be severed. Following the war, they believed that the alliance had indeed crumbled, with Kirei allegedly scheming to take action against Tokiomi. Kirei remained silent, simply taking a seat in the chair and glancing over at the unconscious Ryunosuke. He then reached over and plucked the transparent film, imbued with magical energy from Ryunosuke's right hand. A small, almost imperceptible smile curled the corners of his lips. To think that such a childish method of disguising the master was effective, fooling even the most astute among us, Kirei mused. It's no wonder Gilgamesh has taken an interest in him. Kirei withdrew a book of God's teachings from his pocket, flipping through the pages as he pondered. His understanding of God's law had undergone a huge shift. With only 5 rockets remaining in his luggage, Kiritsugu launched each one until the once grand police hospital was reduced to nothing more than a pile of rubble, engulfed in raging flames. Kiritsugu methodically organized his weapons, making sure to replace all the bullets in his prized gun with origin bullets. With everything in order, he charged into the police hospital. The RPG caused a chain reaction that detonated the power plant, resulting in nearly 9 consecutive explosions. Kiritsugu couldn't be certain if the master hiding inside had been killed, but if the opponent had set up any bounded fields within the police hospital, they were now undoubtedly destroyed. His remaining objective was to enter the building, search for corpses, and eliminate any masters who were still clinging to life. After submerging for some time, Shirou felt as though the oxygen in his lungs was running low, but the explosions outside had finally ceased. He emerged from the water and looked around, a chill running down his spine as he surveyed the destruction. The scene before him was devastating. Towering buildings reduced to rubble, lush greenery reduced to ashes. Everywhere he looked, all he saw was fire, like a sea of flames that had consumed everything. The thick black smoke rose and darkened the sky, making it feel like a giant hand of darkness was covering it, and the light had become dim. It was impossible to fathom the amount of money that had been lost in this single attack. Shirou pushed these thoughts aside, knowing that now was not the time to dwell on them. The current situation suggested that Tosaka Tokiomi was undoubtedly present within the police hospital, and that the previous RPG attack was highly likely to have been carried out by Kiritsugu. With this in mind, the police hospital presented the perfect opportunity for Shirou to defeat Gilgamesh and Artoria. The flames roared around Shirou, casting an eerie glow on his face as he dismissed his shields and projected 2 long, sharp swords, holding them firmly in his hands. Regardless of whether it was Tokiomi or Kiritsugu, he was determined to defeat them both and ensure his survival. After all, what is life but the desire to simply exist? And if using everything at one's disposal is necessary to achieve that, then so be it. The inferno blazed out of control, consuming everything in its path with reckless abandon. The fiery red flames danced wildly, painting the landscape a dark black with each brushstroke. The scene was one of destruction, the acrid scent of burnt earth carried on the wind. The smoke was thick and black, obscuring Shirou's vision. He held 2 swords at the ready as he searched through the ruins for the 2 prey he had set his sights on. He refrained from merging with his Saint Graph, unwilling to act recklessly. If he revealed his servant's aura, Tokiomi or Kiritsugu would likely summon their own servants on the spot. His demi-servant's aura was unique, and if he used it, it would be like playing a melody on the battlefield. Even with the thick black fog, it would not be able to conceal his presence. The only way to have a chance of killing Tokiomi and Kiritsugu would be if he merged with his Saint Graph at the crucial moment. Half a month ago, if Shirou had found himself in this situation, he would have fled without hesitation. But this was his only chance to defeat Gilgamesh. He was willing to take any risk to make Gilgamesh withdraw. Shirou's heart was filled with hate. He knew that he had no chance of victory if he faced Gilgamesh head-on. His only option was to eliminate Gilgamesh by killing Tosaka Tokiomi. And now, with Tokiomi finally emerging from his magical workshop, was there a better opportunity than this? Shirou forced down his surging emotions and cautiously advanced through the thick black smoke. He needed to be careful not to merge with his Saint Graph in order to have a chance to kill Tokiyomi and Kiritsugu, but that also meant that he would be extremely vulnerable to being killed. But the opportunity was right in front of him. If he didn't take action, would he just wait for Gilgamesh to kill him at the end of the war? That was not an option. However, even without merging with his Saint Graph, Shirou had protected himself to the teeth. He used projection to create impenetrable armor, added a helmet that protected his eyes like a crusader's, and then used reinforcement to increase the armor and helmet's hardness. Finally, he projected a few shields attached to his armor. He also split 13 magic circuits to strengthen his body so as not to be burdened with too much weight and affect his speed. With this triple defense on his body, as long as it's not a special bullet like a sniper rifle, he should be able to withstand it. Ah! Suddenly, his intuition kicked in again, and Shirou felt a gaze fixed firmly upon him. The next moment, whoosh! The sound of a bullet slicing through the air reached Shirou's ears, and he instinctively turned his head in the direction of the noise. Before he could react, however, he felt the rush of air slice against his skin like a knife. In the next moment, a loud thud echoed through the air as the shield he had projected behind him was pierced, as if it were no more than a flimsy piece of paper. Shirou crouched behind a pile of ruins. His body was covered in a cold sweat. He reached out with his mind, manifesting several spears and firing them toward the source of the gunfire, using the collapsed wall as cover. Clang, clang, clang! The spears collided with the rocks, producing a sharp metallic ring. A thick black fog enveloped the area, and smoke billowed through the air, obscuring everything in sight amidst a raging inferno. Shirou was left unsure of what was happening on the other side of the smoke. He cautiously peered out, trying to assess the situation, but a sudden whoosh of wind caught his attention once again. Before he could react, a sharp bullet pierced through his shield and lodged itself in a nearby stone pillar. Shirou quickly retreated and pressed himself against the ruins, his heart pounding and adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Kiritsugu," Shirou muttered under his breath. "There's no mistaking it. This must be Kiritsugu's doing." He was surprised by the ambush and had the impulse to merge with his Saint Graph, but his reason held him back. If he had given in to that impulse, he would not have been facing bullets, but rather Artoria's holy sword and Gilgamesh's treasury. Stay calm, Shirou repeated to himself as he fought to keep his nerves under control. He then took a deep breath and removed the helmet from his head, using his sword to push it away. Ping! His arm dropped as a bullet pierced straight through his helmet. He swallowed hard and quickly put the helmet back on, his forehead now slick with cold sweat. Shirou was puzzled. "This is strange," he thought. "Kiritsugu is using a sniper rifle? But how did he manage to aim at me under these conditions? The black smoke from the sea of fire would have made it impossible to locate me. Yet he found me and shot with incredible accuracy. Did he use something to pinpoint my position?" He scanned his surroundings, and finally, about 20 meters above his head, he spotted a very small flying device. "Drone!" Shirou gnashed his teeth. "This guy is too dirty!" Shirou quickly summoned a sharp sword with his projection and aimed it at the small flying drone, shooting it down. "Buzz!" Kiritsugu held his sniper rifle, watching his opponent on the other side, when he heard the sound of static on the monitoring screen, indicating that the drone had been discovered. But it didn't matter. He had already locked in on his opponent's position. As the helmet of his opponent came back into view of his telescope, Kiritsugu hesitated before taking the shot. Bang! Through the scope, Kiritsugu watched as his opponent's helmet swayed for a moment before slowly dropping. But something was off. He had fired several shots in succession, and yet his opponent was still able to lift his head, indicating that he was still alive and had even managed to destroy the drone. Kiritsugu thought for a moment and made a decision in his heart. Shirou, feeling a sense of relief now that he had dismantled Kiritsugu's surveillance drone, quickly came to the realization that his current location was no longer secure. He knew that if Kiritsugu decided to use an RPG, he would be in grave danger. In an effort to throw Kiritsugu off his trail, Shirou employed the use of Broken Phantasm to ignite the shield he had projected, creating an explosion and a sandstorm that would obscure Kiritsugu's line of sight. Putting his escape plan into action, Shirou sprinted toward the prison while taking cover behind a large stone pillar. Summoning 5 spears, he hurled them in the direction from which Kiritsugu's previous shots had originated. He then activated the Broken Phantasm once more, causing a series of deafening explosions to erupt. Boom, 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 boom! Broken Phantasm is a relatively simple technique which involves a servant detonating their noble phantasm. Shirou had frequently employed this method during his Saint Graph fusion, allowing him to master it without activating his own Saint Graph. However, in comparison to when he used Saint Graph, this Broken Phantasm is significantly weaker. The weapons that are detonated are only those that have been projected by Shirou, and their power is quite low, akin to that of small hand grenades. Shirou continued to project and detonate 13 weapons in succession in order to create a smokescreen. He then slowly advanced toward Kiritsugu's position. While the Broken Phantasm bombing might not have been enough to kill Kiritsugu outright, the real aim was to land a fatal blow in close combat. As they say, it's always best to go for the head, the safest and surest way to end a threat. Despite being outmatched against a servant, Shirou retained confidence in his ability to deal with these magi. Although he would risk being discovered by Tokiomi if he approached Kiritsugu, Shirou believed that he could kill Kiritsugu swiftly enough to minimize the danger. However, after finally finding Kiritsugu's latest location, the scene he saw made Shirou's face turn ashen. Instead of finding him, all Shirou could see was a sniper rifle and a surveillance monitor left behind. It was clear that Kiritsugu had fled before Shirou had carried out his fire suppression attack. No, Kiritsugu is not someone that would run away from a fight. It was an ambush. As this realization dawned on him, Shirou's mind automatically projected and strengthened several barriers around him, creating a protective shell around his body. But before he could react further, a hand grenade landed at his feet. Boom! The barriers were impacted, swaying violently as several layers were instantly destroyed. Shirou quickly replenished the barriers, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. He was grateful that he had reacted in time, as even a delay of a second or two would have resulted in his demise. Feeling safer with the barriers in place, Shirou started to retreat slowly. Believing himself to be secure, he didn't notice that Kiritsugu was watching him from a distance, swapping out his ammunition. He unzipped his coat, took out armor-piercing incendiary rounds from the clip on his waist, and loaded them into his rifle. These bullets were specifically designed by Kiritsugu to deal with opponents like Shirou, who believed they were safe behind steel armor, usually loaded into Type 53 rifles, but they are not very mobile, so Kiritsugu modified them to fit into his own rifle. Bang! Hey! Shwa! While the sound of bullets striking the barrier echoed from outside, Shirou paid it no mind. However, when a small hole appeared in the barrier and flames burst through, he was taken aback. Without hesitation, he dismissed the barrier and projected another one to extinguish the flames, cutting off the source of the fire from his fortress. Shirou retreated rapidly and projected a spear towards the source of the bullets. In mid-air, the spear exploded with a resounding boom. Kiritsugu, who was firing, rolled on the ground and made a hasty escape. However, the heat wave from the blast stirred up sand and debris, pelting Kiritsugu with small stones that dug into his arm, drawing blood. Cradling his wounded arm, Kiritsugu vanished into the thick fog and fearlessly plucked the stones from his flesh. Blood streamed from the wounds, but he gritted his teeth and pressed on.